This is a reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. Week 48, the law of karma bondage or soul release. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it and your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Epistle of St. Paul to the Galatians contains this oft-quoted statement: "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whomsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." An autobiography of a yogi, Paramhansa Yogananda, tells a story of the life of a binary saint, Triangula Swami. A skeptic once determined to expose Triangula as a charlatan. A large bucket of calcium lime mixture used in whitewashing walls was placed before the Swami. "Master," the materialist said in mock reverence, "I have brought you some clabbered milk. Please drink it." Triangula unhesitatingly drained to the last drop the container full of burning lime. In a few minutes, the evildoer fell to the ground in agony. "Help, Swami, help," he cried. "I'm on fire. Forgive my wicked test." The great yogi broke his habitual silence. "Scoffer," he said, "you did not realize when you offered me poison that my life is one with your own. Except for my knowledge that God is present in my stomach, as in every atom of creation, the lime would have killed me. Now that you know the divine meaning of boomerang, never again play tricks on anyone." The well-purged sinner, healed by Triangula's words, slunk feebly away. Yogananda goes on to say, the reversal of pain was not due to any volition of the master, but came about through unerring application of the law of justice, which upholds creation's furthest swinging orb. Men of God realization, like Triangula, allow the divine law to operate instantaneously. They have banished forever all thwarting cross currents of ego. Not by reason alone, but by self-realization, are the ins and outs of destiny fully understood. Their web, though tied forever to the post of ego motivation, is too intricate to be perceived as a single thread. Only great masters can see it with clarity. It is visible to them in all its workings, not from within the from the tangle, but from above, in superconsciousness. As Sri Krishna said in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, "He who beholds inaction in action and action in inaction is wise among men. He is one with spirit. He has attained the true goal of action, perfect freedom. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind."
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Erin, for those of you who might not know me, and good morning to all of you that are joining us online as well. I'm Erin, visiting from Ananda Village, and this is McDonald, our co-leader this morning. And I'm going to share first from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's prayer poems and prayer demands. This one is called Demand for Control of the Unruly Senses. O Spirit, let me feed my insatiable sense cravings with, let me not feed my insatiable sense cravings with further wrong deeds. Teach me to discipline myself that I think always in terms of my true happiness. If my senses become unruly, teach me to govern my will, not to cooperate with them and their desires. to feed them only wholesome acts. As electricity can either illuminate or destroy a building, so human power can either glorify or devastate a life. Let me learn then to govern wisely the finite forces thou hast entrusted to me, that each of them with this twofold potency be directed only toward the good. Let the greedy flames of all my desires consume their own dross, not by self-indulgence, but by self-offering into the white heat of thy wisdom. Teach me, O Spirit, to cooperate with thy will, to perform every duty harmoniously, and to sing the one little song thou hast given me to sing, until all my unruly senses learn to join happily in full harmony with thy cosmic plan. Let the rivulets of all my sense cravings be transmuted into the one mighty river of soul craving. And O Spirit, spare not thy rod of discipline, if ever I stray again toward the senses and away from my true path of craving for thee. So karma, bondage or soul release. It depends on how we respond to what happens to us. Karma is just action. It's not punishment, it's just action. And whether it binds us or frees us depends on how we respond to it. If we are living and responding from ego consciousness, that is bondage. When we resist what happens to us, when we blame others for what happens to us, when we blame circumstances, when we say, why me? Why does this have to be happening? It shouldn't be happening this way. It should be easier. It should be quicker. It should be less difficult. It should be different in some way. That's all the ego talking, resisting what is and what is unfolding. Swami Ananda said that bondage is limitation, and ego consciousness is the greatest limitation of all, from which all others proceed. Ego consciousness is the greatest limitation of all. So how do we get to freedom? Freedom is attunement to divine consciousness, to soul consciousness. As it says in the readings, only the masters see with clarity. It is visible to them all the workings of karma and all that's trying to unfold for each of us as souls. And they see it not from within, but from above. And so in order to respond in a way that brings freedom, we have to attune ourselves to that soul consciousness. And when we start to tune into the way that master sees things, to the way that the great saints see what's unfolding, to the way that God sees what's unfolding, we see that karma is an expression of divine love. It's a gift for each of us. It's a natural law that draws us back towards him. You know, we act in ego motivation, and then there's a natural consequence of pain or disappointment or suffering in some way. And gradually over time, we start to make different choices. Now, this might take lifetimes. We had the teaching of reincarnation last week, and these two teachings go together very closely. You can't really have one without the other. So we start to learn over time that our ego-motivated actions bring us pain and disappointment. And we start to learn from those natural consequences where our true happiness lies, how to go towards that true happiness. And God lets all of this unfold. He doesn't force us to go in one direction or another. He just allows, he has this natural law of karma to allow things to unfold so that we can learn and grow from what's happening. God doesn't want us to suffer. He wants us to grow. He wants us to learn. So you think about, I was thinking a little bit about, you know, some of the tests and losses and mistakes and, you know, what might be termed bad karma that I've experienced. And I realized those are the times when I've really learned the most. When I think back on those things, especially those things that have happened since I've come on the path, when I look back on those things, I don't really feel the sense of suffering. I feel a sense of joy. I feel a sense of expansion for what I've learned and the ways that I've grown and the qualities that I've developed, what I've learned about who I really am and what really matters. It's those moments of sometimes difficulty and challenge that really give us the opportunity to see truly what really matters. So Yogananda said, difficulties don't come to destroy us, but to destroy our ego limitation, our ego delusions. There's a story of Yogananda going to visit Ramana Maharshi, and he asked him, why would God allow suffering? And I think a lot of us, especially these days, we look around and we say, where's God in this? Is this what's supposed to be happening? We start to question, there's a lot of suffering. And Ramana Maharshi simply responded, what suffers? And Yogananda realized what he was saying. It's the ego that suffers. When we're in that ego consciousness, yeah, there's a lot of suffering, right? Because we're identified with what we want and how we think things should be going. I think in some small way, we can all maybe identify with that way of thinking and feeling. It comes to us. So we have a choice in how we approach life and how we approach what unfolds in our lives. And we can approach it with doubt and negativity. Now, maybe we don't necessarily go around poisoning saints like the man in the story who gave the calcium lime to Trilanga Swami, but sometimes we poison our soul consciousness. We poison that attunement with divine consciousness, with our ego consciousness, with those thoughts of why me, of I think I know better than the divine. I think I know how this should be going. It shouldn't be going this way. It should be going this way. This is what should be happening. This isn't right. Just all those thoughts that we think we know better. We're affirming the ego, and that resistance to what's unfolding is just reaffirming that ego consciousness. Swami talks about the story of a fellow disciple at Mount Washington who they were doing a project working on, I think was building a swimming pool at his desert retreat. And they were digging it out, and then they had to pour the cement all in one 24-hour period so that it was like a continuous pour. There was no seams or anything like that. So they had to work for, I think, at least 24 hours straight. And so they started off, and almost immediately there was this one disciple, this one devotee who said, I didn't come here to pour cement, and just sat down. I was like, this is what I came for. I came for meditation. I came for self-realization. This isn't it. Thinking that he knows better than the master what he needs and what this is all about. And Swami comments that, at the end of that day, he was the one person who was completely exhausted. Everybody else was totally energized by the experience. And Swami acknowledges that we all have those thoughts sometimes of, I didn't come here to, you fill in the blank, right? We've all had a moment of that. I didn't come here to do this. This is not what I was, that's not what I signed up for. We've all had at least one moment like that. But when we resist, it causes us so much suffering. We become exhausted. We don't have that energy and vitality of that divine attunement. So we have that choice. Are we going to approach what happens to us in our lives with that mindset of doubt, of negativity, of this isn't what should be happening? I'm not so sure. I think I maybe could make this better. Or are we going to approach it with complete trust and faith? That's what brings attunement to the guru and to the divine. When we have that mindset of trust and of faith, we realize nothing is outside of God. There's that quote, I think it's attributed to Albert Einstein, either you see everything as a miracle or nothing. Everything is a miracle or nothing is. So what's your choice? Even if, maybe I am right. Maybe I'm not supposed to be pouring cement. Maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I really am right and it's not how it should be going. But if I'm in that consciousness, how do I feel? Is that how I want to live my life? I don't want to live in that doubt and negativity. Even if I'm right, who cares? Right? I don't want to live in that. And so we have that choice to just trust that what's unfolding is for our highest good. There's a story of two government officials who went to visit Ananda Mahima in, I think it was 1947, was at the beginning of the time when India and Pakistan were separating into separate countries. And these two government officials went to Ma and said, "Ma, please do something. It's going to cause so much suffering. Can't you do something?" She was a great saint. And so she listened thoughtfully, and she went into silence and meditated. And when she came back, she responded, "Don't you think he who created the world knows how to run it?" Don't you think that he who created this world knows how to run it? That's divine consciousness. And we trust that everything that unfolds is for the highest good. We maybe just can't see the whole picture. So are we willing to admit that maybe we don't see the whole picture and that maybe we need a little guidance along the way? To humble ourselves, to invite Master's consciousness, Master's guidance into our lives. There's another beautiful example from a disciple of Master. Some of you may know of our brother Jairam, who has been in prison for over 30 years at this point. He was wrongly accused and has been in prison. And that's pretty difficult in and of itself. But he's been having some particular challenges lately as he's getting older. He's been having some health challenges, and it's very difficult to get health care when you're in prison. And he said most of the doctors don't treat him very well just because they assume he's, a bad person or whatever. And so it's a real trial. It's a real challenge. And his sister was sharing with us recently that the most recent experience that he went through, he clung to this thought: I am the disciple of a great master. Everything that comes to me comes from him. And I was just so touched by that if we really cling to that thought, I'm the disciple of a great master, I'm a child of God, and everything that comes to me comes from him. What openness, what receptivity, what attunement to invite Master into whatever is unfolding. That's some pretty difficult circumstances. To me, that's very inspiring, because if he can say that and he can affirm that, why not? Why not me? Why can't I say that too? And you think, is that good karma to be, or bad karma to be in prison? I think most of us would think that's pretty bad karma, the way most of us think about it. But Swami said, good karma is that which moves you closer to God, and bad karma is that which moves you further away from him. So when we think of it that way, for Jairam, that's pretty good karma in a sense. It's taken him so deep on this path and really affirmed for him that need to be close to the Guru, to keep Master close in every moment, in every thought, in every breath, really. We think, is it good karma to win $1 million? That's how most of us, think of karma. It's like, if something nice that I like happens to me, that's good karma. And if something I don't like or, unpleasant happens to me, that's bad karma. That's the ego consciousness of karma, right? The divine consciousness, what is taking you closer to God? What is bringing you closer to that divine consciousness? It's not what happens to us, it's how we respond. It's what we become through what happens to us. So how do we move closer to God? How do we become completely free? And the key there is that attunement to that divine consciousness. I wanted to share another little bit about Jairam. He wrote a letter recently about his experience and some of the things that he went through, the physical challenges, but also how he was responding moment to moment, and just the incredible growth that he experienced. And I just found it so inspiring. He was talking about, at one point he was in the hospital and hooked up to a bunch of IVs and chained to the bed as well. But he had just enough room to get up and stand at the corner of the bed and do some of the energization exercises. And I mean, he was weak beyond compare. The nurses were saying, don't do that. It's terrible for your heart. He's been having heart trouble. But he got up 4 or 5 times a day to do that, because that's his commitment to Master. And so when he was finally free of all the IVs, he said he started to try and just walk. He was back in his cell again and just walking around his cell just for 45 minutes a day, just to keep moving. And he said it was extremely difficult. He was becoming, not without trial. It's not like he was back to his old self, so fatigued and lightheaded. And shortness of breath. And so he said, as I walked, I pictured Master and Sri Yukteswar in those photos we have from 1935 when he went back to visit. Especially Master, his eyes and the set of his body showing him pouring uplifting waves of consciousness into the world. With every step, he's thinking of Master. Never mind all the troubles, keeping his mind focused on Master. I saw myself there with him, looking into his eyes. It is not about who I am. It is about who Master is. That's attunement. Think about that. It's not about who I am. It's not about this little self, what I can do, what I think is possible, how I think it should be going. It's about who Master is. He says, on our path, it is a sin to think of oneself as a sinner. It is by attunement we rise. It's by attunement that we rise into that divine consciousness. So I wanted to share just a few thoughts on what we can do to strengthen that attunement and really respond to the karma, to the circumstances in our life in that divine consciousness rather than ego consciousness. And there's many more ideas, of course, but I'll just share a few that I came to as I was reflecting on this. So the first one I was thinking about was how important listening is, how important it is to listen. I mean, first of all, just thinking about what we listen to on a daily basis and whether it's affirming ego consciousness or divine consciousness, even just TV that we watch, the music that we listen to, things like simple things like that. Does it bring us more calmness or more restlessness, right? Is it bringing us more towards that inner stillness, or is it activating those storms of restlessness? To really make time for stillness and silence, not just in meditation. Yes, we need our daily meditation practice, absolutely, for that moment of quiet, that moment to hear the divine voice. But also as we go through our day, just pay attention. Are there times when I can maybe just have there be silence, have there be stillness, pause, even for a moment? And practice the techniques. This is another form of listening. Master gave us what we need to be liberated, but are we doing it? Are we listening to what he's asked of us? Just check in. I'm not saying this as a corrective, just as an opportunity to introspect and say, am I really listening to what the guidance that Master's already given me that's, in the teachings, in the autobiography of a yogi? Or can I maybe look at that again and listen more deeply and practice that more deeply? And then also making sure to take time after the techniques and meditation to be in that stillness, to be in that silence. That's what the Bhagavad Gita talks about as action in inaction. We're still, we're in that stillness of meditation, but we're listening. We're in that receptivity. And we can also apply this in our day-to-day lives, in our conversations, to just listen more than we talk. Think of how that affirms divine consciousness more than ego consciousness, right? If we're always thinking, oh, I got to say this, oh, I got to interject, oh, they got to know this, got to make sure I say this. We're in our egos, we're thinking about ourselves. When we listen, we're thinking about others, and we're tuning ourselves to that divine consciousness. The second one is receptivity. Jairam gave us this beautiful example, right, of everything that comes to me comes from him. Take Master with you into everything that you do. Open yourself to whatever is, and just trust that Master's there with you. He's going to guide you. He's going to take you through this. He's going to give you the strength. That's what I've seen in this example with Jairam, is just his self-offering, his constantly calling to Master. He receives the strength he needs. He receives the blessing he needs to face the tests that are in front of him. And that's true for all of us. He's not special. God loves you as much as he loves Jesus Christ and all the Masters. So that help, that guidance is available to us, but we have to receive it. We have to open ourselves to that and be willing. There's a fun story of Swami overcoming seasickness. He was on an island off the coast of Australia, and he had to get back the next night to give a talk. And it was terribly stormy seas. And he said, I can't show up green at the gills was his phrase. And so, but he knew, this was not going to be too fun. So he got on that boat and he decided that I'm going to take whatever twists and turns the boat throws at me, I'm going to receive it. I'm not going to resist. And so every time, the boat went this way, up, down, left or right, whatever which way, he affirmed, yes, yes. He didn't resist. He went with it, with whatever which way the boat was going. And he said the results were amazing. When he got to the other side, sure, he was a little tired, maybe a little shaken, but he wasn't seasick. And he said after that, he never experienced seasickness again. And I think what an awesome example for how we can face the storms that come through our lives. How often do we say yes to what comes to us? Or how often do we resist? If we're suffering, it's a good opportunity to maybe check in and notice, what am I resisting here? What am I holding? What can I let go of? What can I say yes to? How can I relax? The other thing with receptivity that I would invite you to practice is being receptive to wise guidance. In Education for Life, which is Swami's approach to education that he bases on master's teachings, there's the 4 tools of maturity you have to develop that we all have. Our body, we have to develop, our physical body, our feeling nature, our willpower, and our intellect. And developing a strong willpower is not, I can do it. It's not just that. It's not just I can do it or, whatever comes. It's also sensitively attuning ourselves and receiving guidance from those that are more advanced than us, to seeking out that guidance to balance and guide our willpower. The next thing I wanted to focus on is seva, or selfless service. We were recently having a satsang with Jyotish and Devi, and they were sharing a little bit about some of the challenges that Ananda's faced over the years and how we've kind of overcome those challenges and been able to continue on. And it's what Devi shared is really helpful for how we can face our own personal challenges as well. She said, people were thinking more about how to serve others than about themselves. Thinking more about what can I give? Thinking more about what is needed. Not what do I want to do? What do I think should happen? But what's needed? What's trying to happen? What does Master want? What does Swami want? And how can I give? How can I serve others? Forget what you want, right? Put that aside and just trust. If I give myself and I serve in whatever way is needed, if Master asks me to pour cement, just trust that that's what's needed. Maybe for your growth, maybe for someone else's growth, maybe for the growth of the work, whatever it is, you don't need to understand. You can just trust that Master's going to guide you in the right direction. And even if you don't know how to do whatever it is that Master asks you to do, just put out the energy. Because in putting out the energy, right, we rise. The last thing I wanted to share, last thought on how to strengthen our attunement, how to face what comes to us in that uplifted consciousness, is the quality of love. Kyle shared last week beautifully the story of just the power of loving God to help us overcome our karma. Because really attunement is of the heart. It's not a mental thing. We're talking about consciousness, but really it's as much of the heart as it is of the mind. There was a story of a woman in the early days of Ananda who suddenly had her hands just covered in warts out of nowhere. And an astrologer told her to avoid the combination of milk and garlic and to feed the birds every day. It's an interesting prescription. But after 2 weeks, just 2 weeks of that, all the warts had fallen off. When we give, when we offer kindness, when we offer care to others, we transcend the ego. we get out of our little likes and dislikes and what we want and all those ideas of how we think it should go and all of that, feeding the birds, right? Feeding each other, even just with our attitude and our energy, even those little acts, right? Help us to expand, to think of someone other than ourselves, right? To go beyond that little self. So I wanted to end by sharing just a little bit about one of the founding members of Ananda, Seva, who was, along with Jyotish, one of the very first members of Ananda that helped really start the work and was really Swami's, they were Swami's right and left hand, so to speak. And she passed recently, a couple weeks ago. And she was an incredible example of just accepting whatever came and ultimately seeing that what I'm here to do is transcend the ego and love God and find God. She, at the beginning, was really at the center of the work. She was handling all the finances. She was in the monastery. Swami asked her to head up the monastery, the women's monastery. At one point, she was even helping to manage the community. She was meeting with Swami regularly, spending lots of time with him. And then all of a sudden, all of that dissolved at a certain point. People started, all the monks and nuns started getting married. Swami moved away. She wasn't spending time with him. Someone came and took over the finances. And then it was like, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my service? And she felt really lost for a time. And she realized that she was suffering because she wanted her service to be important. Part of her wanted to feel important, for her service to be important. But then she also realized that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered most was to serve God, to serve others. She realized through that test, and it lasted quite some time. It wasn't just like a year, she had an off year, and then she realized and fixed it all up. So just, be patient with yourself as we're going through these tests. But ultimately, she realized what she really wanted, which was God alone. And that's the opportunity that karma, that our difficulties give us, to realize what we really want, to realize what really matters, to realize who we really are. So I'm going to share a little quote from Seva. She said, "I have come to see that to take up the spiritual path in earnest is to shed everything we think of as ourselves, all of our desires and plans. When we give up our plans and surrender to God's plan for us, we find true happiness. In that state of consciousness, hatreds and judgment can't exist. Human love doesn't exist, only God's love and what He wants of us. God's plan for all of us is that we learn to love Him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We become the person He intended us to be as we do that. So don't turn away from the opportunities that God's sending you to become who you really are. You're not this little ego. You're not your little likes and dislikes. It's not who you are. You're that soul self. So attune yourself to Master, invite Him in to everything that's unfolding for you right now, and find ways to listen, to be receptive, to give and to serve others, to love others, and find that you expand in that practice. Whatever you can do, whatever step you can take towards that expansion. God bless.
Please take what you'd like to give, place it in your right hand, and repeat after me. Divine Mother, we offer to Thee the fruit of our labors.
We offer to Thee the fruit of our labors.
Bless this offering,
Bless this offering.
that it serve as a channel
Serve as a channel.
of Thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere.
Thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere.
Om. Peace. Amen.
So I asked Duty to play this song, Joined in Prayer, which is a song that Swami wrote as part of the attunement ceremony. And so I thought, since we're really focusing on our attunement, it's not just attunement to God, but also in a community, our attunement to each other. Because we're all here, we're not here for our egos, we're here for our liberation. All of us that are here, online or in person. And so through this song, if we join duty in singing, joined in prayer, it's very simple. If you know the words, you can sing along.
Joined in prayer, we worship thee, rays of light that seek the sun. Many drops do make a sea. Thus our love when joined as one. Joined in prayer, we worship thee, rays of light that seek the sun. Many drops do make us see, thus our love when joined as one. Thus our love when joined as one. Joined in prayer, we worship thee, rays of light that seek the sun. Many drops do make us see, thus our love when joined as one. Thus our love when joined as one. Joined in prayer, we worship thee, rays of light that seek the sun. Many drops do make us see, thus our love when joined as one. Thus our love when joined as one.